So now we move on to item 6A. Examination of the reports of states parties on the implementation of the Convention and on the current status of elements inscribed in the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. As you know, this point is very much linked with the previous one, since the Internal Oversight Service has found the periodical reports to be a very rich resource for its conclusions and recommendations. We see that this exercise is important not only to take stock of the progress of the states in implementing the Convention, but also to identify the way forward and where we want to go in the short and long term. Taking this into account, I note that for this third cycle of periodical reports, the committee will examine 10 reports by states parties that ratified the Convention in 2005 or 2006. Mr. Proshan, the floor is yours to present the items to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the members will recall, reports are submitted in accordance with Article 29 of the Convention, and then it is the task of the committee, as laid out in Article 7 and Article 30, to examine the reports, to summarize them, and to prepare a report that in turn is submitted to the General Assembly. For the 2013 cycle, we have a total of 47 reports that were expected. 40 of them were from states parties that ratified the Convention in 2006, and 7 were delayed from previous cycles, states that were, for one reason or another, unable to respond. A year ago, the end of December 2012, we received 26 reports from states, and 10 of them were then finalized after feedback from the Secretariat. We had expected, based upon the rate of ratification, that half of the states parties would have already submitted their reports over the course of the last 3 years. 16 states from the backlog are working on their revised reports, and 2 of them have recently submitted revised reports, but too late to be integrated into the document in front of you today. 19 states, which is a significant amount, have never submitted even a first version. And I think this needs to perhaps have some suggestions from the committee as to how to alleviate that situation. When reports are submitted, the Secretariat then prepares an initial assessment and sends additional guidance to the states on how they can complete the form most efficiently. For the 2014 cycle, where the reports are due 2 weeks from today, we've also prepared a document that lays out some of the recurrent problems in order to try to assist states at the front end rather than wait until the reports are submitted. And again, this may come up further in your discussion. The annex to document 6A would then constitute your report to the General Assembly, if you accept it. Part 1 provides a description of the working methods that are used by the Secretariat and a summary, a general summary of the periodic reports. Part 2 provides the overview of the measures that are taken by the 10 reporting states to implement the Convention, and then we'll continue with Part 3 and Part 4. In the bulk of the report is really the national implementation of the Convention, and an important topic there then is the institutional capacities that each state has developed and put in place to implement the Convention. As the iOS report yesterday, the evaluation pointed out, ratification often leads very directly, either before or after ratification, to the introduction of new legislation or the revision of existing legislation and rules and procedures and so on that are connected with that legislation. The institutional arrangement for safeguarding intangible heritage at the national level is often centralized by an overall cultural policy body, typically a Ministry of Culture, but sometimes it's decentralized to regional and local units, for example, in federal systems. Sufficient financial or human resources are often lacking, the states have reported, and this has consequences that are very direct on the capacities to safeguard the intangible heritage. You've just spoken about the question of the visibility of the contribution of NGOs within the periodic reporting. The reports, as already submitted by states, show that the role of NGOs varies significantly. But where they are active, they can be an important repository of knowledge, a resource for training, and an important point again brought out in the iOS evaluation. NGOs really function as a bridge between communities and authorities. The role of youth and women in safeguarding and transmitting intangible heritage is rarely mentioned and could be deepened in future cycles. And you've just asked the Secretariat to provide some recommendations for your next session as to how to bring those issues out perhaps more clearly in the periodic reporting. The threats to intangible heritage and its safeguarding that are brought out in the current set of 10 reports include things that are familiar, such as the aging population of the bearers and practitioners, the distortion of elements because of touristic performances, the length and difficulty of training to learn the skills and the knowledge associated with the intangible heritage, the general processes of urbanization and the impacts of global cultures, population migration and displacement, loss of environmental resources, for instance, as a result of deforestation, the resources that are necessary for making the tangible elements that are associated with intangible heritage practices become less and less available, and a persistent lack of spaces for the transmission, enactment, and performance of intangible heritage. The second part of this report on national implementation focuses on what are states doing in terms of inventorying. A few of the 10 reporting states have not yet initiated the process of inventorying, while most of them have one or more inventories in place. These are ordered according to different principles, either geographical, administrative divisions, or the 5 domains that are provided in the convention, or a combination of the two. The criteria for inclusion, similarly, are often patterned after the criteria for inscription on the representative list and urgent safeguarding list, so that in certain countries you see a list of intangible heritage and a list of intangible heritage in danger as making up together the inventory system. Viability is almost always taken into account some way or another in the inventories that are reported. Normally, the updating of these inventories is undertaken through either monitoring or when new elements are included. And the depth of community participation, despite the language of 11 and 12, Articles 11 and 12 of the Convention, the involvement of communities varies from a very active role to one of simply being the informants. NGOs, again, often play the role, particularly in respect of inventorying, of interlocutors between the national authorities or the local authorities and the communities that are the subject of the inventorying. Parts C and D within the reporting talk about the different measures for safeguarding that are being implemented in the 10 states. Research and documentation are often considered by the states as essential initial steps in the identification of intangible heritage. And the convention focuses in particular on access to information. So the periodic reporting form also talks about how archival collections, research collections, documentation are accessible to the public either through public consultation in place or through digital means online, and what customary practices each state has put in place to restrict access in the case of sensitive material. In a few cases among the 10 states, the safeguarding of ICH has been included into social and economic development plans, and therefore funds are being granted in the state budget for the promotion of intangible heritage. As we heard yesterday again from the Internal Oversight Service, the issue of sustainable development is prominent in some of the reports and less prominent in others, certainly. But the integration of intangible heritage into national policy shows that intangible heritage is perceived in many states that are reporting in this cycle as a driver of development. The reports often make mention of handicrafts and tourism as resources for local economic development, and raise again the issue that the iOS evaluation did of the potential of the Intangible Heritage Convention to interact more closely with the 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions. Awareness-raising activities are mentioned in all of the reports through TV, radio, social media, and they seem to be a high priority for the states that are reporting, as well as increasing use of the internet. And then, in terms of the promotion of intangible heritage, attention is given to festivals, fairs, museums, libraries, other institutions, local community centers that play a pivotal role in this promotion. In some cases, intangible heritage is incorporated into formal educational curricula, and certain higher institutions now are reported as providing teaching and training, including fieldwork methodology. However, some of the reports also recognize the fact that formal schooling may be, in certain cases, a threat to traditional institutions and traditional methods of transmission. And therefore, many of the reports emphasize the need to maintain these non-formal means of transmission as well, and point to specific examples of educational and training programs that are organized within the communities and by the communities themselves. And then the reports mention the importance of the physical environment and the cultural spaces to the continued viability of intangible heritage, and the efforts that certain states have made to protect those spaces and places where living heritage is enacted. The reports then continue with the activities of each state at the international level, their cooperation, their international cooperation. These may include financial support to the Intangible Heritage Fund and other funds and trusts. And several of the reporting states are hosts to Category 2 centers and make mention of that. The sharing of cultural programs, cultural exchange programs, multinational nomination projects, and regional and sub-regional workshops and festivals. Then the other part of the reporting is the reporting on the specific elements found within these 10 reporting states that are inscribed on the representative list. there's a great diversity of different forms and different domains that the 26 elements that are reported are covering. In general, the conclusions reported in the reports are that these elements themselves and the inscription on the list can contribute to social cohesion and to the sense of identity of the communities, but that these elements also continue to have contemporary meanings and roles in day-to-day life. Gender is sometimes mentioned in connection with the safeguarding of the specific inscribed elements, but here again, it could deserve a fuller analysis. The main threats to viability that are identified for the specific elements are very much like the same threats that are identified for the intangible heritage in general. The impact of listing is focused on in the reports, and states report the fostering of cultural diversity and intercultural dialogue and a general increase in the visibility of intangible heritage. And in some cases, they also give specific examples of increases in the practice and transmission of the inscribed element. Many activities are described to promote or reinforce the element, such as festivals, documentation and research, training workshops, even in some cases legislation that is specific to that element to give it protection at the national level. The institutional commitment and the community participation once again vary quite substantially among the 26 elements and reported from the 10 states. And therefore also the participation of the communities in the reporting exercise, which is of particular focus in the case of the inscribed elements, varies in the degree to which communities are actively participating. Finally, the report concludes with some general comments and conclusions. This is a challenging exercise, both for the submitting states and for the Secretariat and for the committee in turn. The Secretariat has sought in the final section of this document to emphasize some topics that could perhaps receive greater attention from the submitting states and from the committee in future reporting cycles. One subject raised there is that there tends to be an emphasis on positive achievements, but the reports need also to address the challenges and the difficulties that states are encountering, because only by addressing those can the committee better know what its opportunities are at the international level to work with states. Again, echoing the evaluation of iOS, the encouragement to give greater attention to the content of new or revised legislation, so that, again, states who are looking at these periodic reports can find links, can find references, can find examples that they can use if they themselves should be undertaking legislative reform or policy reform. The contribution of NGOs and the contribution of the private sector could be better reflected, and you've just spoken about that a few minutes ago. That again was in the iOS evaluation. Greater attention could be given to the contents and the methodologies that are used for formal and non-formal education. And once again, the questions of community participation and gender, as iOS also pointed out, could deserve greater attention. This then is an overview of the document that is before you, which again, if you accept it, will then be presented together with the report that you adopted last year to the 5th session of the General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prashant. As I understand, state parties should bear in mind that the periodic reporting exercise not only provides them with a valuable opportunity to assess their own progress in implementing the Convention, but also serves as a reference for the other states parties and assists them in identifying lessons learned and best practices that they might benefit from. This exercise also represents a useful tool for us to identify priority areas for international cooperation. Do I see any questions or comments concerning any of these 10 periodic reports or the other topics contained in the working document? Perhaps we might begin by hearing from some of the states that submitted reports, including those that were not yet completed, who might wish to share with us their observations on how they approached the task, what challenges they encountered, and what suggestions they may have for those who will follow in their footsteps. So I mean the experience. So I open Belgium, please.
Thank you, Chair. Belgium was one of these states. As mentioned before, you ratified the Convention in 2006, so this was the first time we were fulfilling our periodic reporting obligation. And I must say that this was a really useful process. It really obliged us to think about the implementation of the Convention, list up possible challenges, and have this exercise, have this reflection. So we would very much like to encourage also other state parties who have not done yet to do the same thing. We went through the periodic reports and also the summary, the overview that was drafted up by the Secretariat, and we would want to commend them for their work. I think it's a very good document. We agree with everything that has been said in this overview, and we think it's a very good summary. Maybe one thing that we would like to single out and stress again, also related to the evaluation, is exactly as was also mentioned in the presentation, the issue of community participation. Also for us, when reviewing the periodic reports, it was not always clear in which extent communities were involved in the drafting up of these periodic reports. And I would like to pass the floor briefly to my co-delegate for some more detailed remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So 26 reports were submitted in December 2012, and normally we should examine 26, and we only are discussing 10. So the dropout number is very high. And one of the items, if you take a look at what happened to the 16 others, is that they are still busy making the suggested changes and completing the report. If you take a look at Operational Directive 165, then we read there, upon receipt of reports from state parties, the Secretariat shall register them and acknowledge receipt. If a report is incomplete, the state party will be advised how to complete it. We received very detailed comments on our report. We were very surprised but also happy that on a report of 60 pages we got 9 pages of comments, very detailed editorial suggestions about contents, points and commas and so on. So it must have been an incredible amount of work, and we were glad to do it, but perhaps it's a bit overstretching the idea of seeing if a report is complete, and the difference between completely and proposing changes could be dealt with. We also wish to point out that there's an Operational Directive paragraph 159 that the committee can also request additional information. So we really appreciate the incredible effort that was made by the Secretariat to provide us with advice. But with more than 50 reports coming, this will be impossible to do it again, I think. So we welcome and encourage the efforts of the Secretariat to present the lessons learned and the suggestions online. And we would really advise and invite our colleagues from other state parties to take advantage of this service that is being offered on the website. And we would also suggest, so in future, not to make that kind of very detailed reports, and we hope that the lessons learned and the suggestions will suffice. We hope so. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your valuable comments. Any other members of the committee? Morocco, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Le Maroc tient à féliciter les États parties qui ont présenté leur rapport et remercie le secrétariat pour le travail de soutien qu'il apporte aux États parties dans l'établissement de ces rapports. C'est un exercice utile et important dans le processus de mise en œuvre de la Convention. Nous voudrions également nous féliciter de la recommandation qui invite les États parties à identifier les défis et les difficultés plutôt qu'à défendre un bilan. Nous aurions reçu cette recommandation un peu plus tôt, notre rapport aurait été peut-être un petit peu plus différent de ce que nous y avons peut-être indiqué. Je pense que c'est là une recommandation très importante. Il est important pour les États parties, pour nous autres, parce que c'est un processus difficile auquel nous nous livrons. Il est important que nous identifions les défis auxquels nous ferons face dans le processus de mise en œuvre pour jauger aussi de l'état de sauvegarde des éléments qui sont inscrits sur la liste représentative. Donc je crois que c'est là un point très important qui se dégage de cet exercice des rapports périodiques. Et je tiens également à me faire l'écho de ce que vient de dire mon collègue de Belgique sur la réduction du volume de ces rapports, peut-être des rapports un petit peu plus ramassés, qui soient concentrés sur les résultats et sur les défis, sur les difficultés rencontrées, et plutôt que sur des informations étoffées sur les différentes parties aux rubriques qui sont contenues dans ces rapports. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. Uruguay, please. Please, Uruguay.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. El Uruguay fue signatario de la Convención hace 6 años y, por lo tanto, está entregando su informe dentro de 15 días. Ha sido un trabajo importante de una comisión integrada por el Ministerio y la Comisión de Patrimonio, el Ministerio de Cultura y la Comisión de Patrimonio, y esperamos que con satisfacción lleguemos en tiempo y forma a entregar el informe. Pero aprovecho esta intervención para felicitar a los que elaboraron el informe que nos precedieron, que fue informado hace momentos. Creo que nuestra delegación apoya en un todo ese informe, en los aspectos generales y en los aspectos particulares también. Por lo tanto, el Uruguay, como Estado parte, y en el informe que va a entregar dentro de algunos días, va a tratar de seguir los lineamientos de este informe que hoy fue entregado al comité. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Czech Republic, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La République tchèque félicite également les 10 pays qui ont soumis leurs rapports périodiques, entre autres parce que ces rapports peuvent nous être très très utiles à nous tous qui attendons cet exercice. Et nous remercions également le secrétariat pour son résumé très détaillé qui vient de nous être présenté. Le fait que les autres pays n'ont pas soumis ces rapports suggère néanmoins qu'il s'agit d'un exercice particulièrement difficile, ce qui nous amène à penser qu'il est nécessaire de mieux définir et préciser le formulaire des rapports qui devrait, à notre avis, indiquer surtout les impacts spécifiques, les résultats, si vous voulez, de la mise en œuvre de la Convention, décrits avec la coopération pas seulement des ONG, mais aussi et surtout des communautés, les détenteurs des éléments du PCI. C'est pourquoi nous soutenons l'initiative de révision de formulaire de ces rapports tels que figurés dans le projet de décision. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. Burkina Faso, please.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Le Burkina voudrait également s'associer donc à toutes les félicitations qui ont été adressées aux États ayant donc soumis leur rapport à bonne date. Parce qu'effectivement, ces rapports-là nous donnent en tout cas l'opportunité de pouvoir partager des informations avec les autres États partis. Informations effectivement donc qui peuvent nous aider donc dans le partage des connaissances, dans le partage des expériences et autres. Le Burkina Faso devait également soumettre son rapport pour examen pour cette session. Malheureusement, pour des problèmes de coordination et également des difficultés techniques qui n'ont pas permis donc qu'on puisse pouvoir finaliser le document, il n'a pas été transmis à délai, dans les délais impartis. Mais je vois que comme nous étions certainement beaucoup avancés déjà dans l'élaboration du document, le Burkina ressort un peu déjà dans ce rapport pour cette fois-ci. Donc nous allons, je crois, améliorer le document donc, qui nous a été remis avec les observations du secrétariat, voilà, pour un examen pour la prochaine session. Merci bien, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Azerbaijan would like to join the previous speakers in congratulating the state parties who submitted their periodic report. And at the same time, my delegation would like to thank Secretariat for this document, which is detailed, providing information about the challenges, about the shortcomings that we still, that the state parties should address in their reports, and Azerbaijani delegation welcomes the recommendations in the document. But my delegation would like to point out one very important issue which we believe and which was repeatedly mentioned and discussed at the previous sessions of the committee while we were discussing the report of the consultative body and the subsidiary body, which relates to the issue of using inappropriate language. I guess the similar issue was already covered in the document in paragraph 95 of the document provided by the Secretariat. But we would like to introduce some amendment in the draft decision, and I will come back to this issue once we will discuss the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you. China, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. China wishes to pay our tribute to the state parties that have submitted their periodic reports and those who are working on their revised reports. We think that the periodic reports provide important opportunities for state parties to take stock of the progress in terms of the safeguarding work on one hand, and promote information sharing and experiences exchanges between state parties on the other. We believe we can learn from those experiences and from these reports. However, since this is the third cycle for periodic reports, the fact that there are still state parties never submit reports, this really reflects to a certain degree that the need to include in the capacity building strategy the development of curriculum and activities for preparation for periodic reports. This could apply to all three parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greece, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And since it's the first time that we've taken the floor in this meeting, I would like to congratulate the Secretariat and the Azerbaijani state for this whole event, which is taking place so smoothly and so nicely. On this subject of the periodic report, we were impressed when we started doing our own report, which is due this year, this September. And I would like to share with you the feeling that we had in Athens when we were and are still trying to fill the forms on this report. More than ever, we realized that this convention is sort of a plan for managing the intangible heritage of a state, a region, or whatever. This was made very clear to us during our work in filling the report, more during making nomination files or whatever. And we are very glad that we had this opportunity. On the report of the Secretariat for the reports of the states, we would really like to congratulate the Secretariat for their work. It is very comprehensive and very detailed, and we'd like to thank you once more for this. I have one thing to add on our report, on the Greek report. My colleagues in Athens are still working on it, and I'm here. We are not very sure that we'll be able to have it until the 15th of the month. If not, we would kindly ask you to understand what's going on here and give us a chance to submit it fully and as it should on March, whatever it is, the next period that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would like to give opportunity for three observers, Ethiopia, Cameroon, and Oman. Please, Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, Ethiopia ratified the convention in 2006. So this is the first time that we present our periodic report to UNESCO. As you know, there are about more than 18 nations and nationalities in Ethiopia. And from this, we have carried out community-based inventarization of this ICH of 66 nations who live in 3 regional states. The outcomes of these inventories were also published in 4 volumes, both in Amharic and English. In the coming years, we have planned that we'll complete the inventory of these, the remaining nations, and then we'll begin updating to deal with changing conditions. By now, we have also prepared a nomination file entitled the Commemoration Feast of the Finding of the True Holy Cross of Christ, that is the Mescal Festival, to have it inscribed on the representative list of humanity. So we believe that it will be inscribed in this session, in the 8 sessions. In addition to this, we have also prepared video clips documenting the cultures of the various nations in Ethiopia, and we will try to distribute some of these video clips to the participants of this meeting during our break time. So one of the problems or challenges that we have faced in the inventory, in making inventories in Ethiopia, is shortage of financial problems. So we have tried to solve this by using UNESCO's financial support in inventorying the intangible cultural heritage of, especially of peoples in the southern nations and nationalities regional state. So these are some of the points that is covered in the periodic report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now floor goes to Cameroon.
Nous vous remercions profondément, Monsieur le Président. Le Cameroun, qui est État partie depuis le 9 janvier 2013, dit sa très profonde gratitude de prendre part pour la toute première fois à ces hautes assises. Nous nous joignons à toutes les autres délégations pour dire notre grande admiration pour la convivialité, l'hospitalité, l'accueil que nous avons rencontré ici en Azerbaïdjan. Je voudrais dire que le Cameroun compte pratiquement 20 millions d'habitants et nous comptons, sociologiquement parlant, 280 groupes ethniques, d'où l'importance pour nous de nous associer à toute initiative de sauvegarde de l'intangibilité du patrimoine culturel. Et notre ministère en charge de la culture est en train de procéder à un inventaire systématique de nos valeurs patrimoniales et nous entendons rendre la copie en 2014. Nous voulons dire notre grande admiration pour le haut degré des travaux qui sont effectués ici et notre souhait est que nous puissions jouer un rôle de plus en plus ténu, de plus en plus présent pour les prochaines assises, en espérant que nous serons beaucoup plus participatifs encore. Nous vous remercions, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. Now the floor is going to Oman.
شكرا جزيلا. بما أني أخذ الكلمة لأول مرة يسعدني أن أشكركم في حكومة أذربيجان على هذه الاستضافة الموفقة الرائعة، كما يسعدني أن أهنئكم على رئاستكم لهذه اللجنة، وتقدم كذلك للدول اللي قدمت تقاريرها بالتهنئة الحارة، ونعلم تماما أن هذا جهد كبير وعمل يستمر على فترات طويلة. أشكر السكرتارية كذلك على مراجعتها لهذه التقارير وتلخيصها ووضعها بهذه الصورة الواضحة أمامنا لنستفيد منها لا شك. في النهاية التقارير هي مكسب للدولة المعدة للتقرير، وهي مكسب للدولة المطلعة على التقرير، فهي تجربة قد تستفيد منها دولة أخرى ونستفيد منها نحن كذلك. نشكركم ونهنئ مرة أخرى الدول التي قدمت تقاريرها، ونحث الدول التي لم تقدم تقريرها أن تخوض هذه التجربة الرائعة وتقدم تقاريرها سريعا. شكرا.
Thank you very much. The floor returns to the committee members. Latvia, please.
Thank you. As it was already said for several times in this debate, Latvia also very much congratulates the periodic reports received and also very substantial work that has been carried out to propose the overview and summary. So we really appreciate the presented document. And as it was also said, the exercise itself of preparing periodic reports is probably even more important sometimes for the states themselves, and also, of course, informative for the other states parties reading the reports. At this stage, we also would like to point out certain aspects that we find of relevance, also like thinking about the debate that will follow, including on the nominations and other issues during this session. So concerning the instruments applied and eventual threats mentioned within the reports and that were presented already at the very beginning of this debate. So there are several issues we just would like to emphasize. Firstly, as it was already underlined in the presentation, we very much consider it important to follow the legislative developments at national level, which is, to our mind, something to be followed rather closely to study their dispositions as well as impact at national and local level. Secondly, we would like to emphasize the formal and non-formal education as an important aspect which is of significance for local communities, having on the one hand, the possibility to introduce local traditions within their, for instance, school curriculum, and also within the non-formal education measures. And this importance also goes to general awareness raising on safeguarding issues, also including higher education, for instance. And lastly, we also would like to mention the issue of sustainability within the safeguarding process, both including environmental as well as economic dimension. And here, coming back to the mentioned aspect of tourism and also, let's say, cultural and creative industries, that to our point of view might have a positive contribution to safeguarding process. But of course, these developments are to be encouraged in the extent in which the elements of intangible cultural heritage are not significantly threatened, in particular concerning their cultural and social functions. So therefore we would strongly invite taking into consideration the local context whenever evaluating the reports and situation within the states parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indonesia, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me also join the previous speaker in congratulating state parties who already submitted their report. My delegation actually belongs to those who take the benefit of our consideration and discussion on this particular issue. And one thing for sure, for us, the report is useful. For Indonesia, we are very much aware on our time limit to submit our report on 15th of December, and I just want to take this opportunity to inform all the members state that Indonesia is making every effort to finalize our report so as to submit it on time and of course in full. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Uganda would like first of all to thank the Secretariat and the states parties that provided the periodic reports. Uganda has noted that in these periodic reports there is a linkage between the content presented and what was presented in the evaluation report of the Convention on a number of issues. One of the issues raised is that of lack of financial and human resources, which would affect the implementation of the Convention, and that means there is need for the committee to identify better ways of strengthening that aspect. The other issue of linkage which was raised was that of involvement of NGOs as critical to the implementation of the Convention. And it is indicated that once the NGOs are fully involved in all the processes of implementing the Convention, then there is the aspect of sustainability, and therefore would encourage states parties to really work hand in hand with these NGOs. The other issue which is coming out clearly is the role of gender in the activities related with the Convention and that of the youth. And it's noted that if gender is not considered, then it would have a greater negative impact on its implementation. In the case of Uganda, we are implementing a project of inventorying intangible cultural heritage in 4 communities, and it has been highlighted as an area that we need to take into consideration lest we lose track. And finally, we would like to extend our thanks and appreciation to all those state parties who have submitted this report, because it is providing those other state parties who are due to submit their reports to pick lessons and learn from them and be able to implement better the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the time limit for our discussion on this matter is coming to the end. So first of all, I would like to propose Madame Duvel to answer some minor questions which occurred there.
Oui, je voulais juste très rapidement vous dire que nous avons la même compréhension que vous sur l'importance de ces rapports et ce qui peut-être un peu peut expliquer les efforts que nous faisons pour donner des retours de ce qui nous semble pouvoir être enrichi. Nous ne faisons pas un travail, à part vraiment les aspects très techniques où il manquerait vraiment des pièces fondamentales, le retour très très détaillé que nous faisons est plus pour donner la chance aux États parties de vraiment donner tout ce qu'ils peuvent dans ces rapports pour que justement ces rapports puissent servir d'exemple aux autres de ce qu'ils ont achevé, des défis qu'ils ont rencontrés. Donc on est aussi dans un processus de renforcement des capacités, mais en quelque sorte entre les États eux-mêmes qui s'échangent les informations. Et je voudrais quand même répondre à la Belgique très précisément. Quand nous faisons ces lettres, ensuite l'État peut très bien dire non, 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 nous on estime que notre rapport ça suffit, et vous nous le présentez comme ça, on leur laisse le choix. Donc nous n'éliminons pas des rapports au motif qu'ils ne répondent pas à l'ensemble ou à certaines même de nos conseils. Nous leur donnons ça comme retour et ils font ce qu'ils veulent. Soit ils soumettent leur rapport et c'est déjà arrivé, soit ils décident, comme la majorité d'entre eux d'ailleurs le font, et comme je crois que la Grèce vient de nous annoncer qu'ils vont le faire, ils décident de prendre cette occasion pour faire des rapports plus nourris qui, en conséquence, évidemment, produisent des analyses par le secrétariat beaucoup plus riches et beaucoup plus nourries, puisque c'est un peu un cercle vicieux. Si les rapports étaient très secs, comme souvent nous les recevons, eh bien l'analyse serait d'autant plus sèche et peut-être que l'exercice aurait moins d'utilité. Donc c'est ça un peu que je veux expliquer. Alors je suis toujours, moi, très motivée de chercher à essayer de réduire le plus possible les efforts que nous faisons. Et c'est pourquoi, malheureusement, j'ai asséché totalement les retours sur certains autres mécanismes, comme par exemple les listes, la liste représentative ou la liste urgente, qui deviennent vraiment des retours techniques uniquement. Je pense que là, tant qu'on a encore un peu de force, l'investissement en vaut la chandelle, parce que je crois que ce type d'analyse ensuite devienne un petit peu comme le cœur de la mise en œuvre de la Convention et des conseils pour la mise en œuvre de la Convention qui émergent de tous ces rapports. Voilà, c'était la petite précision que je voulais donner.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask to show on the screen the draft of the document 6A. Can we have it on the screen? As far as I understood during the evaluation of this draft, there were no proposal to have any amendments and anything. So we have one. Which one? Azerbaijan. Let's see the draft in general, then we will pass to the amendment. So the document itself had been submitted, so we don't need to discuss paragraph by paragraph. So what is the amendment of Azerbaijan? Can we see this amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said in the general debate, we have an amendment which we believe is very important, as we discussed and this issue over and over at the previous sessions, which relates to the issue of to avoid using inappropriate language, which might potentially undermine the mutual understanding and dialogue. So this is amendment that we would like to introduce. It is on the screen. I don't know whether should I read it or remind state parties to take particular care in their periodic report to avoid characterizing the practices and actions within other states, including expressions that might inadvertently diminish mutual respect among communities or impede intercultural dialogue. Thank you.
We are waiting for French translation to be done. Members of the committee. If no objections, if any. I don't see any. So, can we approve the declaration 8.com6A in general with addition number 17? Thank you. Belgium, please.
It's about number 13, encourages state parties to involve more actively the communities, and could we add, as we normally do, groups and, where applicable, individuals, to have that connection with the convention there. So not only communities, but also groups.
Paragraph 13, yes, you mean? Other objections, proposals? Japan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'd like to add the same modification to the paragraph 9A of the decision 5C to 15A, that is, at the end, in such a manner as to alleviate the burden of the state parties concerned and the Secretariat. Actually, I mentioned the state parties concerned that included the Secretariat and state parties. But so I repeat once again, in such a manner as to alleviate the burden of the state parties concerned and the Secretariat at the end of 15A. Thank you.
Please reflect it in the text. 15A. What is the formulate again, please? Can you?
In such a manner as to alleviate the burden of the state parties concerned and the Secretariat. There are some differences from the decision 5C1, that is the addition of the Secretariat. So I hope the same change will be made to the previous decision, if it is possible. Thank you.
We will return to the previous decision, but concerned with that, please.
Yes, Japan also reminds us that decision 15B repeats the language of the previous decision, but it was amended by you. So at lunchtime we will correct the language of 15B to reflect the decision that you took a few minutes ago concerning the participation of NGOs in the periodic reporting.
Thank you. Morocco.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur Prochan vient de donner la réponse à la question que je voulais soulever concernant le 5B, mais puisqu'il vient de nous préciser que ce sera aligné sur le 5C1 que nous avons déjà adopté, donc c'est très bon. Merci.
I think we should not return now to the discussion of number 5. Let's proceed with the number 6 and then... If you don't mind, we will approve the draft in general and asking Secretariat to clarify this matter concerned with the paragraph 15B. Belgium, please.
It's about number 13. Before individuals, we would like to add the word where appropriate.
Okay.
And where appropriate.
Okay. Kyrgyzstan.
But also 15A, the report focuses on results and activities.
You mean instead of rather than to put
rate in end activities.
And activities. Any objections? Okay. So I don't see any other amendments. So we approve the declaration 8.6a in whole with the apply to Secretariat to clarify the position 15b. Approved. Thank you.